it's been a crazy couple of days around here.
Yeah, the last 48 hours have been interesting.
Lots of national attention focused on our state and also focused right here on Good Things Utah. I was watching your social media last night. I knew you had this interview coming up with Ashley Banfield from News Nation, and you did a great job.
Well, thank you. I think it's really interesting because we have so many people who sit right here, Nisha, every day, and we don't necessarily know their background or what's happening in the last few years of their lives. And so this is Corey Richens. She came on the show. She wrote in to the station saying, I have a book that could help grieving children who may have suffered a loss. So we brought her on, and she talked about her husband who passed away, and all she said was he died suddenly, unexpectedly, and it was a shock.
Do you remember we sat with her after and we talked for a while, as we sometimes do with guests before they leave? Maybe, you know, we're not in the next segment or we have a break, and we spent a few minutes after. And I remember her saying she thought it was COVID. She thought he had a lung issue, so a complication from COVID. And that was the discussion. Didn't think much about it again until we started to hear from people writing in saying she's a suspect in his case.
And we were just as shocked as everybody else. I wasn't here that day. I did not meet Corey. But you're right. Saray, you and I came from the news side of broadcasting, and there's this investigative journalism that we do on that side. On this side, it's a lifestyle show. It's a mother who says she's grieving and wrote a book to help her children grieve, and you do the interview with that in mind and that way, with compassion.
Yep.
And then you hear weeks later that she's been arrested for murder. And there was definitely a hush that came over our offices at Good Things Utah.
Yeah, we did have an inkling that this was coming down the pipeline on Monday. And yeah, this happened, again, to give some timeline. This is a search warrant, and the death happened a year ago. So back in April, they searched the house. All the documents were sealed, so no one really knew what was happening and what was found until later.
Do we know when the autopsy was done? Was that done a year ago?
We believe so.
Because the findings are so shocking.
Right, 5 times the amount of fentanyl in his system. So we are still hearing a lot more details that are coming out. But we, of course, didn't know. This interview that happened with this woman a month ago, before the charges actually came out.
Something you would never expect. And like you said, all we know is the talking points we have, the message that she wants to portray. So we sit down and we, make each guest hopefully shine their best, and we dive into the conversation. And
so I know you'll get asked this question because you're doing another interview tonight with Dan Abrams, who's the legal analyst for ABC News. And Ashley Banfield asked you the question. Any inkling at all that what she was saying was not legitimate, that she wasn't actually grieving?
Right, so Ashley Banfield asked that question, did you have any spidey senses? And of course, when you look back after the fact, you're like, well, I wonder if that was interesting. And she didn't show emotion, right? We have so many people who grieve in different ways, they process differently, and who are we to say that's the wrong way to process, right? So for me, it was someone who was sharing their story, sharing a tool to possibly help other kids, but we didn't know. I mean, she didn't have any emotion.
There'd be no reason you would suspect anything different at that point.
No, I had no spidey senses. And I agree, people show and express in different ways. And that's not the first guest we've had sit down and talk about something that's hard or painful or loss. And some people get misty-eyed. Some people come in a little more prepared for it, and they can power through and be composed. I did clock that she wasn't necessarily emotional, but I thought, okay, well, it's been a year. Maybe she's just prepared to speak about it. And I did think that it was an interesting choice, what she wore on the air. She was all bundled up in her jacket. Her hair wasn't quite brushed. And I thought, she's still going through it. She's grieving. She's not quite together. So it's expressing it in maybe that way. She's not quite pulled together. But I don't know. Now I have so many questions.
Now you're going back. Now you're rethinking what you thought.
And we're thinking, why did she come on? And was she pretending? And was that a great actress?
And she did contact us.
Right.
She did reach out to us.
Her. She actually wrote into the station saying, can I promote my book?
Now eerie to see this couch and that video being aired across the country on stations everywhere and national television, because That is the video that they're all asking for and they're using because it is so shocking that she came on local television just 3 weeks before her arrest.
Yeah,
Well,
and
and-
so many people, I'm sure you're hearing this too, messaging and DMing and sending links and asking questions. And they're saying, did you know you're in this clip that's on Inside Edition or all these shows? And I'm like, yes, it's crazy. We know. We're still figuring it all out too.
Well, it's just interesting too when you thumb through the children's book. That is the image of her husband and her child, and they said they wrote the book together, the mom and the 3 kids, 10, 9, and 6. And that's where my heart is that these kids now are going through something so tragic, and they might not even understand what's to unfold.
And they won't have parents. The dad is gone. Who knows what will happen with her, what her fate
Been
will
charged
be.
at this point.
Right.
She's just been charged, but she is being held without bond, and the investigation continues. And that interview tonight, I'm sure this will not be the last, you two, of being asked again, what was that like? That airs with Dan Abrams probably tomorrow.
I think
And you're shooting.
It might be tonight.
Does it
Yeah.
air on his show tonight on
Yeah.
News Nation? And then you two, okay, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
What
a quick
time.
turnaround.
Yeah.
And her hearing, by the way, a detention hearing next Friday. So
Okay.
we'll see
Very
what happens.
surreal.